I have not been to Minnesota in probably 20 years.
Bring gas. Welcome to Flagrant Howls, a Minnesota Timberwolves lifestyle podcast.
Coming to us live from Phoenix. Well, live as we record this. On demand for those of you consuming Flagrant Howls. It's our guy, Kyle Theige, in the house last night as the Wolves put it on the Phoenix Suns for a sixth straight, clowning and punking and wet-willying potentially Devin Booker for a sixth consecutive game, Kyle.
Those two teams do not like each other. I don't really
It's funny because
know.
Ant and Durant love each other, but then everyone else around them hates each other.
In post-game, Ant had said that he wasn't really tight with Devin Booker before Team USA, but then they became, he said friends at Team USA. I still don't always buy that because Jaden's his guy, and I don't know if there are two players in the league who hate each other more than Devin Booker and Jaden McDaniels. There was I think Devin Booker hit a three, and he kind of walked up and essentially kind of pointed finger guns at Jaden's face. So Jaden wanted to get retribution on that. But a fascinating game. Dane Moore and I did a big pod last night, but it was coming off of that Hawks win, I guess you would call that, after they had maybe their best game of the season against the Nuggets. So kind of a weird first half, and then one big point for me, one big victory lap on Camelback Mountain today for coaches getting ejected to inject juice into their team. I've been asking Chris Finch to do that for 3.5 years. First ejection, I believe, of his Timberwolves tenure, and it directly led to an inspired performance led by, again, their identity defense.
I think there is a conversation to be had here for why does this team so often need external motivation to play at their peak? And maybe that's just part of having a young superstar, and we can get into all that stuff and get your on the ground accounting. And I also have, and you were there last night, but I want to read the accounting of what got Chris Finch actually ejected, because when you watching the video on TV, it's boy, that looked really innocuous, but there's a hilarious accounting here. But this episode of Flagrant Howls presented in part by Bricksworth, which is, man, if you're looking for some of the best dry rub wings in the Twin Cities, and you can see them on the YouTube channel here for the audio audience, just stop in to the North Loop Bricksworth location, just steps away from Target Center. There's parking available too. That's probably cheaper than parking by the arena. But go in before and after home games, for away games too. They got the game on TV. But we're talking Cool Ranch Dorito dry rub wings, some of the best Detroit-style pizza you're going to find. I know Nas Reed was out last night, but you can get the signature Nas Reed Hazy IPA at Bricksworth. And again, super close to Target Center. It's actually kind of patio weather today. I don't know if there's going to be actual patios open in the Twin Cities, but for patio season, there's a sprawling patio, beautiful event space. So check them out. Bricksworth in the North Loop. Also, old Macadac here got himself a new dentist a few months ago. My dentist of 10 plus years retired on me. Didn't even ask, just disrespectfully, did not even ask my permission to retire. But it left me without a dentist. And thankfully, Park Dental was here with open arms. And I like to creep around on the reviews to find out, all right, what am I getting into? And it was 5-star reviews across, Google reviews. There's likely a Park Dental within just a few minutes drive of wherever you work or live in the Twin Cities. Incredible experience for me. Over 50 years, Park Dental has been caring for and cleaning teeth in Minnesota and Western Wisconsin. So check them out. Schedule your checkup at parkdental.com. And we appreciate them supporting Flagrant Howls here. A reading from Chris Hine, Star Tribune. Finch received a technical foul in the first quarter, and on the first technical, crew chief Pat, Frayer, told a pool reporter Finch used profanity directed toward one official. So that's what got him teed up the first time. On the second technical, Finch made, quote, derogatory comments toward all the officials. A source who asked not to be identified said Finch referred to the officials as, quote, bozos, Kyle.
Shout out to Chris Hine. Again, we're going to have him on, I think, maybe in a week to promote his book that I've gotten to read most of, and the book on Ant is going to be incredible. So if you haven't yet, go to Chris's X Twitter feed, and you can kind of pre-buy it now. But he was on it last night because all of a sudden there was that technical foul, and you kind of saw Finch standing by Beal. We had pretty good center court seats, and all of a sudden there's just another whistle, and just pointed and said, "You're out of here." And you're watching Finch the whole time. It's like he wasn't really being demonstrative or anything. Then he lost his mind. But yeah, Chris was all over it, and then a source told him what he said, and it was bozos. They got him thrown out.
Great underutilized insult word, by the way.
I mean, it's kind of like a Chris Finch thing too. Like, of all the stuff that he probably says, it should be kicked out for saying a non-swear word. But it did. I mean, Ant sprinted he was almost on the baseline when Finch got tossed, and then he just sprinted to like get Finch out of there, because then Finch was like, oh, I'm gonna get my money's worth. And for the second straight time in that arena, Micah Nori was called upon to just kind of close it out. And the first time was because Chris Finch blew out his knee, and this one is because he blew a gasket. But they really did respond. It was pretty incredible to see. Like, it kind of galvanized them. It was about 5.5 minutes into the third quarter, and it was a close game. They'd fought back from being down 6 or 8 at half, but from that moment on, it was just kind of like the Denver game, where they just physicality, the ability to play 3 or 4 wing defenders, not just Ant, Jaden, and Nikhil that you're always used to. But I mean, Jaylen Clark played his first minutes ever in non-garbage time, and he held his own against some of the best guards in the league. So it was a really cool performance, and there's something there between those two teams. I mean, the energy in that building. A Suns-Wolves game in January has a lot of snowbirds, and there was a lot of Timberwolves fans in that arena, and they let them know in that fourth quarter.
Can we let's start with, there's so many things to talk about off this game and then just throughout the week. But Jaylen Clark, man, and the funny anecdote, I'm not sure if everyone caught this, and if you're not like obsessively kind of going through post-game quotes like we do. So last night was the first time, because he never plays really. Like, he'll get some G League run here and there, but he's mostly just enhancement talent right now on the bench, coming off missing a year with a torn Achilles, second-round pick. He's just kind of stashed way down. Well, DiVincenzo out, Naz Reid out, so that rotation, those guys slide a little bit closer. But he was watching, like, was it like his nephew trying to do like a 7-minute? He was watching something pregame, thinking like, I'm not going to play. He didn't go through his normal pregame routine, he said, for the first time in his career, and was kind of caught off guard that he was even going to play in that game last night. And he comes out, dude, and I just out of curiosity, I went back and pulled up from NBADraft.net the scouting report on him coming out of UCLA. And what you saw in 10 minutes last night was spot on to this scouting report. Suffocating perimeter defender who was widely recognized as the best perimeter defender in college basketball last season. Incredibly disciplined defender who laterally moves his feet masterfully and fully extends on contests without fouling. And like that would be a perfect 2 sentences to describe his 10 minutes and the impact on that game last night. I'm sold after watching that and the work he did in just a snippet of time. I'm not saying he should be out there for 25 minutes every night, but like, that dude needs a 5 or a 10-minute window of playing time in this rotation every night based on what we saw.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack with Jaylen. 2 things that come to mind. But first, I was sitting next to a player personnel executive from the Cavs last night. Actually, the son of a pretty famous someone who worked for the Timberwolves for many years back in the day. And then Jaylen Clark just starts going off, right? And again, I know this much about basketball, and the guy next to me knows everything. But he said, he's like, oh yeah, we had Jaylen Clark a couple of years ago. Like, that's a first rounder for sure if he doesn't tear his Achilles, which kind of makes sense because he was the best defender in college basketball a couple of years ago coming out. But the other thing that's really interesting, and yeah, Jaylen had said that I didn't do my pregame routine because I think he was watching maybe his cousin run on the treadmill, and he didn't get his nap in. But he probably, again, he came in and was asked to do one thing, play crazy good defense, and anything else he could give him would be a bonus. He had an offensive rebound and a putback, but he looked lost on offense, and that makes total sense because he hasn't played before.
They're like pointing where to go and how to space and stuff. Yeah, there's some work. And
it's cool because like Mike and Rudy were doing a lot of that. Like, they were both really excited for the kid, but he doesn't get out there, in my opinion, if another young pup doesn't blow a defensive assignment. So Josh Minot checks in at the first intermission or between the first and second quarter, and 12 seconds into the game, he's up in the corner. I think Beal back cuts him. Something that I'm sure they've scouted, right? And Finch called out Gobert the other day. Finch called out the team after the Hawks game, and Finch called out Josh at practice the other day. It was like his defense has lacked. Like, that's why he's fallen down the pecking order again. And Josh played 12 seconds because it was an and one, I think, at the rim, and they immediately subbed him out, and then Jaylen kind of got that spot in the rotation. And I saw some people be like, well, if you're going to do that to Josh, why not keep that same energy for Anthony Edwards and Julius Randle?
Wow.
I don't know if you've ever had a job before, but like, have you ever been an entry-level employee? They don't get treated the same as, managers. So it's not the same energy. Like, you're not going to bench Ant because he loses his assignment on defense. But for Josh, they're asking these young guys, hey, if you're going to come play right now, you have to defend. And Josh couldn't do it. And then Jaylen stepped in, and he gave you shades of UCLA. He said post-game, too, that, like, how do you get better at defense? I've always thought that with Rudy, right? Like, offensive guys in the summer just work on thousands of shots. But, like, how do defensive guys, like, get better? And Jaylen gave a lot of credit to having to guard Ant in practice and be like, dude, that guy, and he pointed at him. He's like, that guy, his speed, his creativity, like his ability to make shots, that's made me a better defender. So really cool moment for a guy that I know also kind of looks up to Kevin Durant because of what he did with his Achilles. So a cool moment on a pretty big stage for a guy that's been fighting his way back from a pretty devastating injury.
Yeah, I think I don't know if we need like a 30 for 30 documentary on just like what has prevented the organization and the coaching staff from trusting. Now, then Josh Minott comes out and shows you like, that's probably their evidence is see why we don't trust these dudes to come in here because we watch film for 2 days and boom, this dude gets back cut in 12 seconds. But there's enough evidence here now. Like Luka Garza has come into a couple games now in non-garbage time and like the sky didn't fall. Even if it's only for 5 or 6 minutes, he'll come out, knock a three down. Maybe he commits a couple of fouls, but Rob Dillingham at this point is just instant microwave offense. If he's out there for 15 minutes, he's going to score double-digit points, and maybe he is a liability on defense. But we've seen enough now from Dillingham in 10 minutes last night from Jaylen Clark. I mean, Minott, we could probably debate at this point just the way they feel about him. But there should never be a night where they only play in the regular season 7.5 guys in the rotation now. There's talent here. And we haven't even gotten to the Terrence Shannon Jr. portion of because he's been injured, or Leonard Miller, who right now is the lone Timberwolves representative in the Rising Stars game here in a couple weeks. So, yeah, I come away from this thinking that was based on the two key rotation players you were down and the offense you're missing with DiVincenzo and Naz Reid. Going on the road, it's the first end of a back-to-back. Phoenix has been playing better lately, and you're all bunched together in the standings. To come back and have like a 28-point turnaround in that game, like top 3 impressive win on the season for all those reasons.
And it's another one of those, I call it demoralizing loss for Phoenix. That's probably exaggerated, but Denver, they just bullied. Like they just said, we're stronger than you, and we're probably faster, and we just have better athletes. And they kind of punked a Denver team over the weekend that had been cooking, right? And then they lost to the Bulls, they lost to the Knicks. They kind of punched Denver in the mouth and they haven't recovered. Same goes with Phoenix because Phoenix they start with like Nick Richards and Royce O'Neal. They tried different things. They tried KD at the 5. And every time Coach Bud for the Suns threw something at them, they just were like, okay, well, we can do this. We can do this. Luka Garza, high pick and roll with Rob in the first half and then doesn't play in the second half. But I'm with you that they have this team, and I was reminded again last night from someone who like works in the league and scouts these guys, like it's a loaded roster. Like, you might not always like all the guys or some players might frustrate you, but what Tim Connelly has done since he's got here is added, there's 3 or 4 guys on the Wolves bench that never play that are probably very much in the Suns rotation. So I hope tonight when we tune in for Wolves Jazz, second night of a back-to-back, that Jaylen gets another chance because I think that's like classical conditioning for dog. I think rewarding him with a couple stints is good. Yeah. I hope Rob continues to play too, but they ironically, sadly, kind of needed some injuries to open some of this stuff up. Obviously, Dante leads to Rob. Naz leads to kind of a smaller lineup. But yeah, they got a lot of young guys that are ready to play. And what you saw last night is if your number gets called, you better be ready and you better have paid attention to all the classes, right? And all the film sessions. And I think Jaylen didn't, Josh didn't, so that's why he kind of usurped him in the rotation.
What do you make? Dude, Julius Randle has had a lot of really productive, like fitting into the flow games compared to early in the year. Last night, again, 28 points on 16 shots. I still think he only took 3 threes last night, but I could do without like the 5 3-point attempts per game, maybe like a couple if you're wide open. But the way that he is now using his gravity and his ability to back guys down to get open looks for other players, it's definitely clicking more for him in the flow than in the first couple months of the season. But obviously, like I've been on record for weeks now, I don't want him dictating the dominoes falling in the offseason by potentially exercising the player option. But they're at a high water mark. They're 26-21. It's a back-to-back, but like they should win tonight. They should beat Washington. They might be sitting on like a 7-game win streak, high water mark on the season, going into the trade deadline next week. So where are you at with this right now? For this season, this is the best that they are playing, and it's the most that Julius Randle has sort of fit in. And you're only a game out of the 5 seed right now. I think you're two games out of the 4 seed because Denver's lost 3 games in a row too. So has this recent stretch changed your thinking for the trade deadline at all?
100%. And just
I thought you were going to say no.
Just based on, again, kind of as you know, being around people this week in Arizona, and if they would have been 500, even like today, I know that they're only 3 or 4 games over 500, so we're really kind of
5 actually
tight margins here. But I think if they were a 500 team a week from now, they would have sold. But I don't necessarily, and I've kind of said this before, I don't necessarily meant like Julius Randle addition by subtraction. Like maybe there's a chance they try to flip Nikhil for a first or something, right? Like there's certain guys on this roster that are also very highly coveted by contending teams, and maybe they would have said, you know what, let's just continue this, quote unquote gap year. Being in that locker room last night, and you've done this many times being in locker rooms, it's just kind of a different vibe. And this is a team now that does believe they kind of found something. Kind of talking about, the Mavs don't have Luka right now and the Lakers don't have AD. There's really no one in the West. OKC's on their own level, I still think, even though they've kind of stumbled. But they're not, this team, rightfully or wrongfully, they're not scared of the Rockets. Like, they kind of look at the Rockets like everyone looked at them, right? Like, do it in the playoffs. Same for, like, Memphis. Like, they've been able to go toe-to-toe now with Memphis a little better. So I don't know. I think it's going to be a fascinating, it's a week from today that this trade deadline comes through. But Dane Moore, who always does a good job of this, reminded me that I kind of thought, Phil, that if Julius was on the team on February 7th, that, like, it was a really bad thing. Just not because he's a bad guy or a bad player. Last night he might have had his cleanest performance. No turnovers, just kind of fit in, did what he's supposed to do, played good defense. But I don't think, like, there's still a window here after the deadline, especially like on draft night, where you could still kind of see exactly where that Pistons pick falls, see what happens in a playoff run. Jace Frederick said this, but if the Timberwolves were to like make the second round, I'm almost positive Julius Randle's opting out. Because the math just kind of tells you, like, Julius probably played well enough. They won a first-round playoff series. They're on national TV every other night. He's probably opting out. And then that kind of alleviates some of your issues, right? You don't have to associate an asset or attach an asset to get out from under the fear of him picking up that option and being kind of cooked by the books. So right now, today, and this is always going to change, I'm going to have a different take tomorrow, especially if they lose to the Jazz. But I would say right now that they probably don't do much at the deadline. And also a factor, the second apron and the CB and all stuff, it's really hard to make trades. Gone are the days where you can just trade him to a team with cap space for a couple, it's a lot harder now. So they probably need a little luck if they do want to dump him with like the Jimmy Butler trade and being a cog in a 3 or 4 team deal. But I woke up today thinking that this is the roster and the lineup with some of the young guys getting sprinkled in that's going to try to make a run and see what they can do in the playoffs.
So, okay, because I have a take on that, but just because there's been a lot
that's the message, not the messenger. Like I would still be like,
that's how they feel, but it's also kind of how you feel. It sounds like, and let me set it this way, because I've been in full wait and see mode since the Cat trade. The Cat trade goes down. Love the DiVincenzo piece. Love that you got that Pistons pick. Interested in what the vision is for the Julius portion of it. I see basketball reasons for why it makes some sense, and we've seen some of those basketball reasons pop up lately especially, but was all along thinking Cat trade was A to B. DiVincenzo gets off the plane, the pick gets off the plane, and then Julius gets rerouted to Destination C, and only then can we fully evaluate this thing. And I would expect Destination C to happen by the trade deadline. If it doesn't, what are we doing here? And I don't know, personally, I look at the Western Conference, and I said this to Judd and Declan on Flagrant Howls this week too. There's only one team in the entire Western Conference where I would say, really, really, really long road to beat that team in a 7-game series. And it's the way Oklahoma City has been playing. Now, they got beat by the Warriors last night, and they've yet, with this iteration, yet to make a deep run to as far as the Wolves have. But if you were to take this Wolves team playing at their peak, like we saw against Denver, like we saw against Phoenix for the last 3 quarters, I think they can beat almost anybody. Like if it's Wolves Houston right now, are you thinking right now, yeah, no chance, Houston in 5? I'm thinking Wolves might win that series in 6 or 7 games. It's not crazy to say that this team, based on the Western Conference landscape, could win a series or 2. And what do you do with that information? Again, I don't want the presence of a 30-year-old Julius Randle. He gets dumped on too much, and people are like using him as like a scapegoat and a villain. There's some flaws there, but I don't want his presence and him potentially opting in to cost the Wolves Naz Reid. So I do have some long-term issues, but it makes you pause and think, boy, if this thing is kind of gelling the way that they envisioned and they can make another run, maybe with a worse regular season record, but it's an interesting twist, I guess, is my point.
Yeah, it's interesting is probably is selling it short. I mean, it really is a fascinating situation because I don't know if this idea that we thought a month ago, right, when it was really hard to watch and the body language was tough and it didn't seem like Julius was fitting in as well, that addition by subtraction, like that was like, let's just get rid of the risk of him picking up the option this summer to make sure that we have a little more safety with signing Naz and stuff. But then again, this is kind of like being around the team and talking to people. They're really big, and you will tap into this, I think, more than anyone, this idea of culture that Chris Finch and Tim Connelly and new ownership or whoever is trying to like install. If you just get rid of a starting 4, and then yes, Naz would slide into that as a starter, but you literally now have like less of a bench. And hopefully Dante can come back. It sounds like the toe wasn't nearly as bad as maybe people thought. But like to go from Karl to Julius didn't really work out, but obviously you had Dante in this pick. But to go from Julius to nothing, you are like down a really useful member of what has these last couple of weeks. I mean, last night there was 2 different instances where if Ant was on the bench, they didn't have anyone else to create. Rob is a really good option, but he will admit, like, he's 20. He needs a little help sometimes. He's going to be really good. But right now, like, that's not the best. Rob Dillingham isn't the best option in round 1 of the playoffs when Ant's on the bench. It's probably Julius. So I just think that there's a window here where they say, our trade deadline acquisition is Dante DiVincenzo. He's coming back, let's say, sometime in February or whatever, and we're going to see what we can do. And if we can muck this up and win a first-round series and, you know, second round, maybe it's Memphis, maybe it's the Rockets, whatever, like, we're not really scared of those teams and see what happens. Back to the culture thing, they don't want Anthony Edwards to be in a losing environment is like a pretty big motto for what this organization believes. And I don't know if just getting rid of someone who has started to mesh well around him is a good idea. But then again, long term, I also don't think it makes sense to financially invest in someone that even when it's at the best, like last night was probably the best Ant and Julius looked together, it's still not great. So it's a very fascinating dilemma for Tim Connelly in this front office to figure out.
Yeah, I mean, no matter what, I think Naz Reid has to be a part of this thing for the next 5 years.
And they think that too, yeah.
So anything that would jeopardize that or maybe turn him off, because at the end of the day, he's an unrestricted free agent. I think he wants to be here. I think he loves the people who have Naz Reid towels when they're traveling around on vacation and putting them up on Instagram and stuff. But anything that would deter him from A, having a wide open path to 30, 32 minutes a night and B, a bigger contract is risky.
But have you come around to the idea that right now, like if you're just like, you're coaching for your job or whatever, which Finch is not, but they're a better basketball team with Julius Randle on it. Would you agree or disagree? Like in
versus
this season,
well, they're
versus
a better
addition by subtraction versus him just going away.
They're Well, yeah, which is not much of a compliment to say that they're better with you than literally like not replacing you, but just absorbing your minutes with the guys currently on the team. But I am curious to see, would they be better if there was another piece? But that's the thing, like whatever piece you would fill him with would be an expiring contract, and it would, at the end of the day, be addition by subtraction to get out of the second apron, right? So now, if you were to ask me, would they be better if Naz Reid was in the starting lineup combinations more frequently and went from, what is he averaging? Like, I think it's definitely under 30 minutes a night. Call it 25, 26 minutes. If you gave Naz Reid an extra like 7 or 8 minutes per night, how would that impact things? I think that would be a positive. And then it would also mean more minutes for other guys. But yeah, too many people are pointing to Julius Randle and saying he is actively shipwrecking this team, that if you were to put Cat back on the team instead of Julius, which, by the way, you'd have to take DiVincenzo out of the mix to make that happen too, that this team would be 10 wins better or whatnot. Like, there's just a lot of false narratives going around. And, okay, Julius isn't a perfect fit age, contract, or even basketball. But I agree. He has been a positive reason for why the Wolves are playing really well lately.
And it's just, I can talk out of both sides of my mouth, but I think Julius stays here, and I think they try to just make a run, whatever that means for this organization. But last night I was also reminded, no Nas, so Julius kind of had to step in and play even better basketball, but they can't lose Nikhil. And I don't know, I've always been a Nikhil fan, but I don't know if I would have written him down as like a core member of some of this stuff. You watch him play, you listen to him in the locker room, he is maybe the most competitive player on the team. And that's a team that has guys like Ant and Julius and Nas and Jaden. So if you keep Julius through the deadline and then you try to thread the needle this summer at obviously like on draft night to unload him so that you can keep Nas and Nikhil, you're kind of creating a smaller and smaller margin of error to land all these different pieces. But I just know, again, I think that's kind of why sometimes, Jaylen Clark last night played really well, and at every second he was on the court, he was far and away the 5th best Timberwolves player. And rightfully or wrongfully, and sometimes I think it's wrong, but I get it, I think the reason sometimes the young guys don't get really long leashes is because they are trying to do with Ant what the Hornets don't want to do with LaMelo. And that's constantly, every night, go out there and try to win a basketball game. And if you get rid of Julius next Thursday and then just say, hey, Leonard Miller, you're the backup 4, that team is going to be worse. And long-term, more flexible, better options, I get all of that. But I think they're trying to do, like, to you what you said 2 weeks ago. I think they would like to have their cake and eat it too. That's a really risky proposition. But Tim Connelly, I was one of the people that's like, okay, you did all this stuff, you're all in, just sign D'Lo to an extension and now you have all your starters. And he was like, no, I'm good. And he figured out a way to maneuver. So I do kind of just blindly trust him until something here falls off the tracks.
Me too. Again, I keep going back to this. There's the 2 biggest trades that he's made. The third one was the D'Lo Conley trade, which kind of came out of nowhere, which is what's going to happen if they do make a trade next week. It'll just be like, oh man, that's like everyone's talking about these 3 possibilities. It'll be something that no one's talked about. But the 2 trades that he has received crazy criticism for, the Gobert trade was the first one. He didn't have to do either one in terms of like good graces of fans and making basketball sense. Go back 3 years ago, dude, like they were like a 46-win team. They made the playoffs for the first time in a long time, and they put up a fight even. Like they didn't have to make the Rudy Gobert trade. And he came in and said, yeah, this thing that you think you're building, no, actually, we're going to take it, move it in a different direction. Took an extra year to pay off, but they go to the Western Conference Finals because of that trade. And that's what I keep hanging my hat on with the Cat trade is I know it's like against the grain of what all of the fan base thought that they should be doing, especially on the eve before training camp. But a really smart president of basketball operations who has the vision to see long-term and see around corners, so to speak, decided, yeah, even though I totally don't have to do this, like, in fact, I'm going to get crucified for doing this if it doesn't pay off right away. I know in my soul that this is the right move to take this team to the next level, even if it takes like maybe a year of figuring things out. And I don't know, like maybe I'm an idiot for having blind faith in Tim Connelly for this, but he has a track record of building some really good basketball teams in the NBA. And so I'm willing to let this continue to play out as long as things are continuing to trend in the right direction. And no, I do not think if you were to go back and reverse this months later, that they would be right there with Oklahoma City as the 1 seed and a championship contender if it was Cat minus Dante DiVincenzo and Julius Randle. I don't. In fact, I think they might be in the same spot or worse because guess what? Mike Conley is declining and Rudy Gobert is declining. So I don't know. A lot of people probably still want Cat back, but I continue to think that this was the right move, and we'll see what the other chess pieces look like.
And I hate that this is like the Jay Billis wingspan drink moment of the pod, but another thing that ties into this is that the deadlines coming up there are 2 of them, right? February 6th is the trade deadline, and I think it's like February 10th is this deadline for arbitration to release their findings, their decision. Yeah. Everyone, according to sources, is just kind of waiting for this email to come through to be like who won, who lost, and from there's going to be an immediate domino and ripple effect on either side, whoever wins. So I think that plays a role into it. I don't know exactly how to explain it, but that plays a role into what Tim decides to do in these next 7 days with the roster. It's all not ideal, but it's all fascinating nonetheless.
So what if that email goes to like your spam folder? Do they send a hard copy in the mail too, just to make sure that all the parties have the information?
I think the legal team for at least one side is very much just checking that thing like won some lottery. Everyone's kind of checking their phones every second, and it could happen any day now. But again, it's weird because we don't really know how to talk about that, and a lot of people don't care because it's not basketball or the product, but that also plays into this. So I don't know what they're going to do. I don't really think they have other pieces to move. I think it is like Julius. I mean, you could try to unload like a bench guy you don't play and shave off some luxury tax, but I mean, what is $2-3 million when we're talking about a team that someone's going to get it at a $1.5 billion value and can flip it for 3 the next morning if they wanted to?
Yeah. Well, there was a Jaden McDaniels sort of will they trade him discussion among fans, and we've kind of broached that, but
I'm trying to keep it clean today, but those trades were real dumb.
Yeah, well, you'd be selling low, obviously. Like you'd be like the guy having a bad first part of the season. But he has shown an assertiveness on the boards in the last like 3 or 4 weeks that we've all been kind of waiting for, begging for. I mean, he's every night we know that he's going to draw the toughest defensive assignment on the wing, and like that's worth a huge part of your $25 million, and it kind of goes undetected in the box score sometimes. But like what's the other thing? Okay, yep, lockdown defense, that's awesome, but is there a scoring punch that you could take a leap with? Is there a rebounding? And him devoting himself to rebounding more lately and devoting himself to, instead of just standing in the corner and clanking threes all game, dude, like get to the middle part of the floor, make plays for other people, get to the rim, and put up 15 points or 27 points once in a while. So I've gone from I will listen if including him leads to like a bigger whale player, but you really can't aggregate salaries in the second apron, so it's complicated to, yeah, I mean, if this is the version of Jaden McDaniels that we get going forward, then he might be a discount at $25 million if he keeps playing like this and rebounding like this.
Yeah, him for Cam Johnson would have made your team worse. So, I mean, let's just face it. I don't know why he didn't always rebound, but my biggest thing with him, and I'm obviously his number one defender, is that you better make sure that you've exercised all options with him so that you don't have another Andrew Wiggins situation where he goes somewhere else and like another coach is like, hey, can you just rebound? Can you just go get the ball?
Yeah.
And, we're going to win a title. That was my biggest fear with Jaden. And some of it stuff, I mean, Finch, I asked him last night direct. I was like, is this the best? You've been here for 95% of Jaden's NBA career. Is this the best basketball he's been playing this month of January? And he said, absolutely. And he goes, the problem is that Jaden for years was like all about like make shots, make shots, make shots. What you just said. And I think he started to come around to like, you know what? I do a lot of other stuff. I might be at times the best rebounder on the court with what Rudy's kind of been struggling. I might be the best rim protector. I also might be the nasty guy on the team, a la like a James Johnson, or like Isaiah Stewart. Like, I think every team needs a psychopath. And
someone
Jaden
said like the Ron Artest on Twitter last night.
Yeah, like he's a little bit of a psychopath. And again, some of this stuff, it's like, because I asked Finch a follow-up, and I was like, what clicked for him? Like, did you see this kind of happening in practice? And he's like, that's probably a better question for Jaden. He didn't really take, like, credit for it. It sounds like it was a real Jaden thing, which then it's like, okay, wait, so you just really Andrew Wiggins'd it and decided one day, like, rebounding might be a good option. So wish he would have done it earlier. I don't know how he didn't have any double-doubles at 6'10" in his first 3 or 4 years. But in the month of January, at least, and again, the bottom could fall off of this, but in the month of January, it's hard to argue that he wasn't their second best player. I think he finished, I mean, again, tonight on the 30th, there's one more game, but in January, I think he was averaging 13 points, 6.5 rebounds, shot 41.5% from three, 53% from the field. And I tweeted this out today, and he guards the other team's best player pretty much more than anyone in the league. So I know he got a pay raise. A lot of us like those and try to get those as well, but you take him out of the mix and what Ant thinks of him and what Nas thinks of him, I think that would have been kind of a mistake. So I'm glad that the stock is back up for Jaden McDaniels.
If you go back to mid-December, they had like a 5-day off stretch the second week in December. So they got beat at Golden State. They played that back-to-back at Golden State, and they split it. And they came back home against the Lakers. And it's like something clicked in that 5-day off stretch where and I don't know if it was just, man, he's barely been making threes, or if somebody sat down with him. But he became addicted to chasing double doubles at that point. It feels like, not that he's like chasing a box score, but it was 9 rebounds against the Lakers, 11, and his was that his first or second career? What did you say? Was that his first ever? That was his first ever double-double, right?
I think so, yeah. Earlier this year, yeah.
Wild, dude.
Absolutely insane.
Against the Spurs.
How do you not have 10 rebounds? You're 6'10".
Right. And then he had 2 or 3 more double-doubles, but since that middle of December sort of epiphany that he had, and this may not seem like much, but he's averaging 7 rebounds a game. And like hang a banner, a guy's averaging 7 rebounds, but for a dude that oftentimes you look at box scores like he has 2 rebounds or 1 or none, and he's this athletic, crazy freak. If he's giving you 11, 12, 13, 14, 7 rebounds, a couple of steals, and it's mostly efficient, he's not, he's a 50% shooter from the field, and he's locking down the opposing team's best offensive player. Yeah, that's worth $25 million. That's a guy that you feel comfortable paying.
January wasn't like a small sample size. They played every other night. It's January 30th.
This is a 24 game sample of 7 rebounds a game.
Yep. And in those 15 January games, I think he averaged a combined 3 stocks, so 3 blocks and steals, less than 3 fouls a game. The idea that he fouls out all the time is just not true anymore, and less than 1 turnover. So if you're getting a guy, he's had 8 straight games with double-digit scoring. I think that's a high watermark for his career again, which how did you not score more in those early lean years? But he's basically giving you, again, 12.5 and 6.5. He's guarding the best player. Last night they put Ant on Booker to start the second half, and then they said, hey, Jaden, like, you just got to kind of go guard Durant. I thought he did a pretty good job. And then he gets under people's skin, too. And that is, as Jaylen Clark reminded some of us, like, that's one of the core competencies of being a really good defender, is kind of ruining the other person's night. And I thought Jaden did that again last night. So it's nice that he's finally come to the party, and he had, I guess, his Wiggins moment in Minnesota rather than for another team. But I think you can kind of just put him out there now and not have to worry about him and kind of start to figure out, like, this team still has a lot of issues and flaws that they need to clean up. You saw it again last night in their inability to really take the start of the game seriously after what happened against the Hawks, but also the end of the game, it kind of got a little loose. But yeah, it's gonna be fascinating to see if he can keep up in February what he did in January.
Before we get to the random wolf of the week here, it's time for the Motor City Minute, where we are rooting for the Pistons to make the playoffs so the first-round pick conveys and the Timberwolves get it. The Pistons are in the middle of a rough stretch here, my friend. After, I think, getting up to the 6th seed in the Eastern Conference, they've now lost 3 consecutive games at the tail end of a 5-game road trip at Orlando, at Cleveland, and at the Pacers. So tough slate of games there. The Pacers, a couple nights ago, went with the WrestleMania 17 Rock vs. Austin remix for their player intros. Visiting team had no chance in that scenario. Pistons return home 6 consecutive games, starting with Dallas on Friday night, Chicago, Atlanta, Cleveland, Philadelphia, Charlotte. So there's your Motor City Minute. The Pistons have fallen out of the top 6 in the East. They are now the 8th seed. We need them to win some games, Kyle.
Yeah, they did hit a little bit of a rough patch. They're having a better season than I think anyone in Detroit thought. The guy I sat next to last night that worked for the Cavs, big fan of JB Bickerstaff, who's now coaching the Pistons. But they're a team that probably should be buyers at the deadline. Like, go add a little piece. You have some assets. Like, see how far you can make a little run. I mean, the East, I think, has more good teams at the top than the West does with what Boston and Cleveland are doing. But there's no reason that Pistons team can't finish in the top 6. And with the Timberwolves organization, like, yeah, that's something that they definitely, I think the Motor City Minute is not just you and I. Like, a lot of people now are, what is that pick going to do? And even the higher possibility of it conveying this year is a really tangible asset for teams because this is supposed to be a really good draft. So that's another just fascinating thing to watch. Like, if the Wolves don't play on a given night, like tomorrow, the Pistons might. So go check out the Pistons because they play good, fun basketball. You'll recognize guys like Malik Beasley, but also every time they win, it's kind of like a 2-for-1 for the Wolves.
Yeah, Malik Beasley, man, one of the more fun players to watch on League Pass in 2025.
And the Pistons have Jaden's former teammate from Washington, and Isaiah Stewart, and he just gets ejected all the time. Like, he just wants to fight people all the time. So I hope those guys were in the same dorm at UW. But it's fascinating. I was just kind of scrolling through Twitter, and tonight should be kind of fun. So obviously Nas was out last night. He was pretty sick, but he is clear of the injury report. Rob Dillingham, clear of the injury report, and Mike Conley is questionable on the injury report. So for you and I,
he'll probably rest on the back-to-back, and Dillingham,
I would be shocked if he doesn't rest tonight. And then there's no other option. I mean, I guess you could start Nikhil, but you might see Rob Dillingham get his first ever NBA start tonight in Salt Lake City because if they don't have Mike, they're going to have to play Rob, whether it's off the bench or starting. They have to play him close to 30 minutes.
This is a great chance. Throw him out there. Start him. See what happens. If it's a train wreck after 3 minutes, which it shouldn't be, okay, just put Nikhil out there.
He's tough.
Let's make it happen. All right, let's bring our producer extraordinaire here, the keeper of the random wolf of the weekend, Ross Brendel, in the house.
Hey, boys. How you doing?
Roscoe, is that a new flannel shirt you got rocking there today?
I just don't wear it very often, but our guy AJ, I have a lot of flannel and I just don't wear it as much as I used to. Our guy AJ rocks the flannel and the plaid a lot, so he kind of inspired me to get back into that game.
He's got kind of a lumberjack vibe going on. You know.
Quick knickknacks update for you guys. Your Knicks have won 5 games in a row. So I think the knickknacks and the Motor City Minute needs to go back to back.
Yeah.
That's just my on-air production meeting.
How about this? Cat was taking grief from Draymond Green was tweeting like 20 minutes before Golden State's game against the Nuggets last night, ripping Cat for fronting Nikola Jokic on defense, saying basically he was like challenging Cat's manhood, saying that no one is going to take you seriously in the NBA, nor will you ever be an actual championship contender if you play fronting defense on Nikola Jokic, that you need to play him straight up, even if you give up 40, just to like send a message. So there's that.
Well, the rest of his Warrior teammates, I think, were in the layup line because they had a game like 20 minutes.
I know. It was crazy.
It was fascinating to read.
He's live on his podcast.
Yeah, and then like 3 hours later, he's like, "Oh, I can't wait to go read all those dumb comments. You guys are clowns." It's like just perfect encapsulation of how Twitter works these days. But that was so weird because it's like, oh, you're ripping the 7-footer who you could argue has played better defense against the best player in the world than anyone else. I mean,
yeah. And by the way, go look at Nikola Jokic's box score last night. One of his worst of the season. So
this stuff always makes me laugh though too, because Draymond, why do you care? Honestly, what skin in the game do you have?
There's a layer of insecurity there that it's. I don't know if I think some of it's built in because he was like a 2nd-round pick. He's always been kind of an underdog throughout his career. And some of that has been a burning fire for him to be a central piece on championship teams. But yeah, man, like
it's not your team.
And I know that I am a staunch Cat defender, so you can take my words with a grain of salt here. But yeah, that was weird.
Yeah, I think I've already used up all my passive-aggressive comments this month on the pod, so I'll just keep it to I don't know, just mind your own damn business and don't worry about it sometimes. For Draymond,
see if you can sneak in the plan.
Just try to not be in the lottery. Okay, try to not be continually bringing down the final stages of one of the best players of all time in Steph Curry. Like, try to give him a little something so he's not playing with 4 scrubs out there.
Yeah. You ready for a little random wolf of the week here, boys?
I'm pumped. Also, you just said scrub, so now I don't want no scrub stuck in my head. I don't know where that came from, but that's now in my head. Thanks, Kyle.
Top 15 underrated song.
Let's go.
I think I could get behind
deep.
that.
Yeah, top 15.
A little red light special. Some great TLC songs there. Don't go chasing waterfalls. So, random wolf of the week, year number 2 here. We are tied now at 4 apiece. The last handful of random wolves are Nikola Skidishvili, Jared Vanderbilt, Christian Laettner, and Greg Monroe. Kyle all-time has a 26-16 lead over me. Ross is going to throw out a series of clues. We each get a heat check guess after the first clue, and then 3 incorrect answers after that. If one of us hits a third strike, the other one wins automatically. No Googling. You can Control F search to see if we've done a player before.
And we're a fair amount in now. I don't have the full sheet in front of me, but there's a good number of wolves that we've gone through.
Well, what's 26 plus 16? 42?
42? Yeah, we've gone
42.
through, what is that?
We're
We've
way
gone
over
through-
10% of the franchise history, right?
You give us a few more
15%?
seasons of Flagrant Howls. We'll be doing random NBA player of the week.
I did
Random
see,
Iowa Wolf of the
I
week.
did
Random.
see
Yes.
my favorite random wolf of the week because I got on the heat check. I did see Minnesota's own Tyus Jones last night. He was chopping it up with our guy Dane Moore and some others. I wanted to go up to him and be like, "Hey, I just want to let you know, like, you got me bonus points in random wolf of the week," but I didn't think that conversation would go over very well.
Dude, it's tough for him to get a shot in edgewise in that lineup, man. He didn't take a shot for his first 19 minutes on the floor. But
You should have leaned in and said, Ross Brendel's middle sister says hello. She hasn't seen you since you were baby Ty at the Montessori in Apple Valley.
There was just like a ton of athletes and big time people in the back of the Footprint Center last night. And I just imagine if I was like, "Hey, baby Ty," like that would not have gone over well.
oh, I'm sure.
I might have gotten beaten up.
The rules are out of the way. Gentlemen, are you ready?
Let's do this.
All right,
LFG.
don't forget you have a heat check after my first clue, which will tell you that this random wolf of the week was a McDonald's All-American. Which, by the way, I ran these clues by Declan earlier. I'm beginning to, and I should have known this, if you play in the NBA, there's a really good chance you were a McDonald's All-American.
I feel like that was a clue right there. I feel like
Everything-
you're like surprised a little bit that this guy was a McDonald's All-American, but
No, just in general.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go look at anybody, literally everybody, how many random wolves of the week have been McDonald's All-Americans? A lot.
I think I'm going to get this one
I
on the
think
heat
I'm-
check.
Okay.
You go first. No,
on
you
the
go
heat
first.
check?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Phil.
Gerald Green.
That is not Gerald Green. I love of all the things to be confident in, you're going to get it after one guess. Kyle, who do you got?
Oh, now I feel stupid. Jeff Teague.
It is not Jeff Teague.
Okay.
All right, here we go with the rest of the clues. This random wolf of the week played 14 years in the National Basketball Association.
It's a nice little career.
14 years in the NBA and a McDonald's All-American. Clue 3 for you fine young chaps. This random wolf of the week played for 5 different NBA teams in those 14 years.
I'm going to Control F here.
Okay, you go right ahead. Kyle
we've
is
done this guy.
really marinating on this one. Really marinating. This random wolf of the week, boys, scored over 8,000 career points in the NBA. 8,000 career NBA points. 5 different teams in the NBA. 14 years in the NBA.
Can I calculator? Am I allowed to calculate?
Yeah, go ahead.
There's no Googling, but we can calculate it, right?
There's no Google, but you can pretty much do anything else on your phone that might help you. This random wolf of the week, if you start to do the math, I think I know what you were doing, Phil, averaged 9.7 points per game in his NBA career. You
I rough
already
mathed it to
known that.
9.5, but you got to know the games. But okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's slightly over 8,000 points, too. It's not exactly 8,000.
There are a couple people, Phil, that you are very familiar with or associated with the Minnesota Timberwolves who told me in the last 24 hours that this is actually their favorite podcast segment of all Timberwolves podcasts. So that helped because at some points I'm like, man, if we call it any more random guys from Australia, that we're going to get canceled.
I want to know how many of them we named that they forgot even passed through the franchise. That might be the next thing we need to do a deep dive.
The Skeetish Veely one last week resonated throughout Wolves.
And
fans.
you got that fairly quick, so I hope you gave yourself a parade, a pat on the back. This random Wolf of the Week, boys, last played for the Washington Wizards in 2004, 2005.
Oh, no.
Woo, okay.
I'm cooked.
Okay, so here's your next clue, if you guys are ready, if you're wanting it. Declan Goff nailed the random Wolf of the Week after this clue.
What?
I almost fell over. I was ecstatic for him. I wish we were recording it. This random Wolf of the Week played shooting guard. Last played for the Wizards. Average 9.7 points per game in the NBA. Over 8,000 career points.
Shooting guard.
5 different teams. 14 years in the NBA. McDonald's All-American.
So the Declan thing, Declan loves the Wolves, but Declan's not like a deep dive. Like the second apron makes his head pop off, you know? So, and this is not meant to like degrade Declan, but Declan probably, if you listed all the Wolves in like our top 100 or top 200 list, and yes, we have done that exercise 3 different times. We are sickos. He wouldn't know 60 to 70% of those players, I feel like. So like that in itself is a clue.
So I'll give you guys the same subtle hint that I kind of gave him indirectly before we started rattling off the clues. Because I told him, like, he had no shot at Nicholas Skeetishvili, which I'll never get that name right, no matter how many times I try and say it. I did tell him, Declan, you will know this name. At least I think you will. So there's a little bit of a clue for you guys. Your next clue. This won't help you a ton, but this is how old this dude is. This random Wolf of the Week played basketball. I just wanted to drop this in there because I think it's hilarious. In the Big 8. He played basketball in the Big 8.
Okay. Is it Anthony Peeler?
It is Anthony Peeler.
Go, dude.
Way to
Let's
go, Phil. Way to go. Way to go.
Oh, dude. Anthony Peeler. Okay, are you on? Can you? Someone look this up.
I'm doing it.
I think go back to the decisive game 5 against the Sonics. First round of was it 98? It was like their second or third
maybe.
Trip. And KG and Marbury were bad in that game. And Anthony Peeler carried them almost to a game 5 win against the Sonics.
28 points on
Yes.
10 for 15 shooting. They lost to, it's funny if you go look this up, it says Seattle Supersonics and it has the OKC Thunder logo. 97-84. Kevin Garnett played 43 minutes in this game 5, had 7 points and 10 turnovers. Oh my God. Chris Finch would have gotten fired for that for sure. Anthony Peeler had 28 points, led the team. Terry Porter, Stephon Marbury, Sam Mitchell, Tom Hammonds, and Reggie Jordan rounded out the 7 guys who played in that game.
KG was 3 for 11, like you said, 10 turnovers. Steph Marbury was 2 for 10 with 15 turnovers between the two core nucleus pieces, and it was Porter and Peeler and Sam Mitchell that were carrying it, man.
What a fun Sonics team, though, too. Detlef Shrimp, Gary Payton, Sam Perkins, Greg Anthony, Nate McMillan.
Vin Baker.
That was a good. What a great. You might just be better at this than me. I might have.
No,
I might have had.
Wow.
I'm on a roll right now, but you definitely have the all-time. I mean, you're up. I'm up now on the season 5-4. You did beat me 22-12 in year 1 of Random Wolf, so
you have him rattled, Phil. He is in his own head, doubting himself.
I made the Western Conference Finals once, then I traded my brain for pieces, and now I'm just not as good at this. So
you just need to bank one in like Nikhil did, and everything will be fine.
If you don't mind, Phil, let me meet you at the post-game presser podium. Phil Mackey, Ross Brendel from K-Ross News here. What got you to Anthony Peeler so quickly?
That's what I want to know.
I
What
feel
was the
like
clue?
So quickly. You gave like 8 clues. I feel like we were dragging this one. But you said, well, first of all, McDonald's All-American means very little, I think, in this exercise. You can keep using it, obviously, but it kind of throws you off. You're like, oh, McDonald's All-American. It must have been I think, so 14 years in the league for sure. Time period, because you said his career ended in 04-05, but he played 14 years. So he was a 90s player. And Peeler was what? He was a Laker. He was he a King too? He was definitely a Timberwolf. So 90s player. But you knew he played for a handful of teams. Wizards, I couldn't remember who he finished his career with, so the Wizards thing didn't really matter. But shooting guard. What was your last clue, by the way? You said
the last clue was played in the Big 8.
Okay, that didn't do anything either. But it was like a 9 points per game. Here's what it was: a 9 points per game shooting guard in the 90s that Declan might know. And Anthony Peeler is like the only person that checks those boxes. So
now, Kyle, also Ross Brendel from K-Ross News. Do you think your opponent took a shot at the creator of these questions when he said that the McDonald's All-American clue is basically pointless for this exercise? Would that be viewed as a shot in your mind?
Yeah, I'll tell you what. There's always these subtle little shots at the game maker. I don't know if that's fair, but I'm not gonna get on him because if I lose one more week, I'm gonna say some nasty bleep about yourself. So I don't like to lose. So if you keep pulling out these guys that when I was 8 years old, I'm gonna be pretty pissed off.
This is only Kyle's second 3-game losing streak in the history of Random Wolf of the Week here. So the last one was when you lost Robert Covington, Derrick Rose, and Sam Mitchell in succession back in year 1.
Think, Phil, I'd really have to dig. I think your high water mark ahead of Kyle is just 2 games.
Yeah.
Or two players.
I'm still saving a heat check on Glenn Taylor, so if we can get that in the works, we'll that'll give me 3 bonus points.
I'm still waiting. Has the algorithm pulled a Minnesota Gopher that was a Timberwolf yet? That's kind of what I'm waiting for.
No. I mean, like Minnesota kid like Tyus, but we haven't had a Gopher on there yet.
Which there is a fair amount, actually, that have passed through the Timberwolves, even though albeit briefly.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going through right now. No, I think there's Randy Brewer.
Yes, that's
good
right.
call.
Randy Brewer.
Good call.
And Randy Brewer's the only one. I mean, Tyus Jones is Minnesotan, but not too good for the Gophers.
He'll never get a job in this town unless it's with the Timberwolves again.
There it is, the Random Wolf of the Week here. Yes, thank you, everyone. Thank you for producer extraordinaire Ross Brendel, for Kyle down reporting on the scene in Arizona, the Timberwolves
golf course.
Yeah, a high water mark, 5 games over 500 with some winnable games coming up. And this is your favorite Timberwolves lifestyle podcast, Flagrant Howls.